New build day. Dead exciting. You know what it is. Put it in the thumbnail this time. I'm actually really excited about this build. It's something I've been planning for a long time and I think it's an absolutely iconic instrument. If you came of age in the late 70s or early 80s like I did and loved a little bit of punk rock, the Ramones will be something of a cultural cornerstone for you. And a massive part of that is the Mosrite guitar that Johnny Ramone played pretty much throughout his entire career with the band. Now, I've done tribute style guitars in the past. I did the bass that Paul Simonon smashed up on the cover of London Calling, and I did a Les Paul Jr. very reminiscent of the one that Johnny Thunders would have used. However, both of those guitars were kind of in the style of and looked like they would have done when they came out of the factory, not after years of hard use on the road. This one, however, I want to make an exact replica of how the guitar would have looked when Johnny stopped playing it towards the end of the 1990s. And that will include all of the wear, all of the distressing, all of the relicking, etc. Which is something I don't normally do, but I think for this build, it's a really, really important part of the whole thing. The guitar itself is quite interesting, and for those that don't know, it's a Mosrite Ventures 2. And this particular version of the Ventures guitar was actually designed as a student model. It doesn't feature the iconic German carve which adorns most Mosrites. Instead, it just utilises a plain slab body. This was a problem on two fronts. Firstly, the people at Mosrite didn't really like the fact that it was as plain and unadorned as it was. And secondly, even though it was a student model and it sold for $100 less than the other models, it cost the same to build. And because of those two factors, it's actually an incredibly rare guitar. It's estimated there was only between 100 and 150 of them ever built. If you compare that to the Holy Grail, a 59 burst, they actually made around 1,600 of those. So there aren't that many of them. And I'm pretty confident when I say in the United Kingdom, there won't be any whatsoever. Johnny bought the white guitar in 1977 to replace a number of guitars that were stolen out of a storage unit apparently, including his blue Ventures 2 slab-bodied guitar, which the white one replaced. And it's estimated that it was played by Johnny in over 2,000 gigs until the end of his involvement with the Ramones in 1996, at which point he sold it to Ramones producer Daniel Ray, who then sold the guitar in 2021 at auction for over $900,000. Like a lot of guitars that stay with one owner for a long period of time, it did undergo some customization. Firstly, the vibrato unit was removed and replaced with a stop tailpiece. And in some photographs, you can see what appears to be a piece of cardboard covered in duct tape over the hole that that unit would have left. However, I have noticed in some early shots that that piece of cardboard doesn't seem to be there, and there seems to be a white painted body underneath it. So I think that needs a little bit further investigation, and I'm not entirely sure which version I'm going to go for. Let me know in the comments. The standard Mosrite pickups were replaced at some point, and there's a DiMarzio in the bridge position and a Seymour Duncan mini humbucker in the neck. Apparently the neck position humbucker was disconnected after a little while and just the bridge pickup was used. But my thinking is, if I'm going to go to the expense of buying a Seymour Duncan pickup to put in this guitar, it's going to work. And the last major departure from stock is that the tuners were replaced with a set of Grovers at some point. So that will also be replicated on this build. Okay, so now we know exactly what it is I'm trying to reproduce. We can get down on the bench and see what I've got to reproduce it with. But before I do that, can I just ask for a quick favour? Just head down there, hit that like button, and if you haven't already done so, subscribe. It really does make a massive difference to me and the way that this channel operates. Now this build is probably going to turn out to be my most expensive build yet, because some of the materials involved are kind of not that readily available, and some of them are just a bit more expensive than I normally spend, especially the pickups. But if we're going to do it exactly, we're going to do it exactly. First up is the body material, and the original was made of basswood, however you like to say it, and this is what I've got. This material actually isn't that readily available in the UK, so it was quite a job to get hold of this lump. The body on this guitar is actually quite big, and I think if you look at some of the pictures of the Ramones playing, you'll see that the body on Johnny's guitar is actually bigger than the P bass that Dee Dee's playing. So I've had to get a bit of basswood suitably sized for a bass, which wasn't particularly cheap, but there you go. It is what it is. For the neck, I've got a great big chunk of just plain maple, which is what was on the Mosrite. Big sheet of black pickguard material. Obviously we're going to have to make a template and cut that ourselves. Pretty standard truss rod. The tuners were changed to some Grovers. I've got some Wilkinson Grover style tuners, just really to try and keep the cost down a little bit. I've had a lot of success with Wilkinson tuners in the past. I think they are kind of a decent low cost alternative to something like a Grover, and I'm sure they will work absolutely fine. Pretty standard stop tail piece, nothing special there. The bridge is something I've not really used before. It's got little roller saddles on, which is similar if not identical to the bridge that was used on the original guitar. Got some pots, pretty standard 500k CTS pots, and then an output jack, nothing special there. I've got this special capacitor, which is the only one I could get in the correct value at the time. Apparently this one has got extra mojo in it, so it should sound absolutely amazing. It probably won't make any difference whatsoever. Just got some pre-cut stainless steel frets. These are kind of medium, so they're not that big. The frets on the Mosrites of this era were renowned for being particularly skinny. They were almost non-existent, and I've seen examples that have come into a repair shop and the frets are basically worn down to the tang. There was so little material there in the first place. So I'm going to put something a little bit more sensible on there, but without going too big. Three-way selector switch. The neck on the original seemed to be screwed straight into the body with no kind of neck plate or ferrules in place. I don't really want to do that, so I've got some threaded inserts to go into the neck and also these little kind of stainless steel ferrules. So that will be a little bit of a departure from the standard, but I think I'll put the ferrules in before I paint the body and you probably won't be able to see. And then the final thing is the knobs. Now Johnny had two different knobs on the guitar. He had one of these silver capped kind of witch hat knobs for the volume, and then he had a Telecaster knob for the tone. So that's what we've got there. In terms of the hardware, on the original guitar, it was incredibly corroded. The chrome had almost completely gone off everything. I don't know if I want to go to that extent or not. Relicking chrome, it's a bit of a black art, and I'm not sure if I want to go there, to be honest. We'll see. Let me know what you think about that in the comments. Okay, with that all explained, it's time to start the actual build, and I'm going to make a start on the body first. So we need to take that great big lump of basswood and turn that into a body blank. And the first thing I'm going to have to do is mill this great big lump of basswood down to the right thickness. I want this to be about 44-ish mil. I'll probably get it down to about 45, leave myself a little bit of kind of wriggle room to clean things up. It's currently about 48.5, so we've got a little bit to take off this. It's a little bit over thickness, not too much of a problem. I have got just about enough width. There isn't a great deal to play with. As I said, this is a quite a thick body, and as it stands, we are kind of quite close in terms of the width that I've got available. So I can thin it down okay, but when it comes time to straighten two of these edges up so we can get a good joint, I really need to be taking as little off as humanly possible. Well, that was actually a right faff. It was just a little bit too wide at one end to go through the planer, so I've had to clean that up a little bit with the plane just to get it down to the thickness. Luckily, I've got a little bit more width than I need at that end, so that's all good. So next, I need to take some measurements and ensure that I've got kind of enough material to work with here. The body is actually 360mm wide at its widest point, so that means I basically need 180mm. Now at this end I've got over 200, so that's fine. And I need two bits that are 470, so I'm going to go 480. I'm going to go a little bit longer, I'll go 490 just to make sure I've got kind of enough. And at that second bit we are just at the 180, so we're absolutely fine. We're close, but we're fine. I think what I might be able to do is where I've got this thin end here, I can flop that round so it's matched up with the thick end here, which in theory should kind of give me ample material. So I am going to mark a line, break out a handsaw and chop this down to the required length, and then we can see about getting these edges straightened up so we can get a glue joint going on. Okay, so I've double checked on the drawing and we are where we need to be. Basically that measurement of 490 that I gave is kind of probably an inch more than we need, so that isn't an issue. And having looked at the drawing, we only need that full width of 360mm at one end of the guitar. Where the horns are in that area is actually a lot thinner, so we should be good to go. So I'm just going to break this down into two halves. Get a handsaw because it's too big to go on the bandsaw. Shouldn't take long because this wood is actually quite soft. I've had a couple of basswood guitars in the past. One of my current Strats is actually basswood and they dent the second you look at them. The wood is quite soft. But it is also light, and that's a distinct advantage. Okay, so there's the two bits roughed down. I cut the other end off on the bandsaw because it was small enough to go through. Now, this gap down the middle, it's not actually that bad. Both of the boards are pretty square, but this one here, I think, it just kind of kicks out a little bit at the end. So I just need to kind of clean that one up a little bit. But I think with a little bit of planing, we should be able to get these down to something like where we need them. Now, as things stand, I've actually got about 390mm of material in width. So we're actually over an inch wider than we need. So I've got a little bit more material to play with than I thought I did, which is lovely. But still, I want to take as little off here as possible. There's a little bit to do on the other one, but I'm just going to mark them so I know what I'm dealing with. We can do the same here. It's ripping out badly. And after kind of 20 minutes or so of backwards and forwards with that, I've got a nice tight joint. There's no gap whatsoever. Once you get a couple of clamps onto it, and in terms of being straight, we're pretty good. We're well within the tolerance that we need to make this work. So I'm just going to gather a few bits and pieces of clamping coils and some clamps and stuff, and we can get this glued together. And there we are, ready to go with this. And it's just straightforward, banging a bit of tight bond onto there. Put it on, probably way more than I need. And get that spread out. That looks to have gone down very nicely. I don't think we're going to have any problems with the joint on that, but we are going to have to leave this for a little while to dry up. I'll probably leave it a day or so. I've got some other things that I can be getting on with. So that would be as good a place as any to leave the first episode of this build. As always, don't forget to hit the like button if you've enjoyed this. Subscribe if you haven't already done so, especially if you're a new viewer. And I'll look forward to seeing you in a couple of days' time with episode 2. Thanks a lot for watching. Bye-bye.